Okay, so hello everybody. This is Sully Speaks, and I have Zaid Ansari here, and he has like a very interesting story. I'm gonna let him start off with his background. I'm really excited about this interview. One, because I was just telling him how he kind of reminds me of my dad, and and also like I want to hear his he has a strong educational background, and he talks about he has a degree in criminology and policing, and he also knows a lot about business. And what I want to bring to the table, especially in our communities, is financial awareness and financial independency. And I want to kind of help as much as I can. So here we go, brother Zaid. Let's could you tell us a bit about your background growing up and stuff?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I I grew up in Ohio and I spent my early years in a small town that's outside of Springfield and Dayton, Ohio. The name of the town is Yellow Springs. It's the home of Antioch College, and I grew up basically in a family business. Um, my father also that's outside of Okay, my father also worked at a place, at an industry. I have two sisters. Um, Basically, grew up educated in a traditional way. Uh, I experienced from my parents a very um, orderly and strong work ethic. Both of my parents were very focused on work and keeping your word and working hard and education. Um, both of my sisters were very high achievers, early adopters. I was the rebel and kind of rejected that kind of ethos, although the seeds were planted. And it took me until probably the last part of senior high school for my upbringing and training to take root, and it took root pretty good. I went to a HBCU that is in Southwest Ohio, Central State University,
Okay.
and at Central State there was in the late 1960s. We were one of the first schools that ever had a organized opposition to the absence of African American studies and Black studies. And that led to a campus takeover, which we took over the administration building and brought ourselves under the spotlight of national attention. And it kind of woke up a lot of us to explore race, class, and identity in a new way. And it caused me to question almost everything that I had been taught, not by my parents, but by the general society. I ended up dropping out of school in the last part of my sophomore year. Excuse me. And I started to work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. And I traveled in the South with Jamil Alameen, H. Rat Brown, Stokely Carmichael, George Ware, and was involved pretty much for a couple of years in that organization and broadened my perspective about politics and race and all those sort of things. All of that would become a impetus for me to kind of break with tradition. And when I went back to Ohio after my stay in the South, South Carolina, Mississippi, I went back to live close to home, but not at home. And I came into contact with the teachings of the Nation of Islam. And that was in 1968.
Okay.
And so I was active in the Nation of Islam from 1968 to about late 72, 73, just before Elijah Muhammad passed away. I became dissatisfied with the mixed message. I love the focus on community and self-awareness and self-reliance, but some of the theological teachings disturbed me.
Mm.
And I drifted away from that community. And after Elijah Muhammad passed away, I came back and I participated for a couple of years with the leadership of his son, Waradin Muhammad. And then I just kind of walked away altogether. Um, when I came back from Mississippi and left the Nation of Islam, I went back to school to finish my degree. And I finished at a school in Ohio, not too far from Central State, at the University of Cincinnati. And I did a bachelor's and master's degree there. And then I went on to Florida State University to do a PhD in criminology. And my focus in criminology actually wasn't in theory. I was more interested in the research side, in statistics and methodology. And I went on to teach back at the University of Cincinnati for 5 years as a professor in the Department of Criminal Justice. Um, Left there, ended up working for the National Council on Crime and Delinquency on the West Coast. As I left Ohio, that would be my last residence in Ohio in, was it 1996, 1996. So all of these activities and moving around had given me kind of a worldview that led me to um, mine these experiences into the form of a book. And so in the late 80s, I it was the late 80s, I began to write again because I wrote a lot when I was an undergraduate, but I didn't publish anything. And I started becoming interested in writing, and I started to write a lot. And so I hooked up with some brothers from the West Coast. And one of the brothers that I became acquainted with was a um, early participant in leaving Los Angeles and moving to Gambia. This was in the middle 90s. And so, our histories are never just linear. So it was kind of like a non-linear effect. Also, I became very involved with Sheikh Mohammed Jabali. May Allah preserve him, in the Quran and Sunnah Society of North America. And he was my mentor in Arabic and in studying the authentic Sunnah. I became very much involved in that organization. But at the same time, I was also interested in exploring my roots in Africa. And I ended up going to the Gambia. And my first visit to the Gambia, I was hooked. I was hooked on just, finding. I remember this was an incident. I chronicled this in my book. I took off my shoes and we were looking at to purchase a piece of land. And it was a very warm day, a very sunny, beautiful day. And I took off my shoes and my socks, and I felt the warmth of the soil uh, pass up my feet through my legs to my body. And I said to myself, I'm home. I felt that organic connection.
Alhamdulillah.
So, alhamdulillah. So I ended up purchasing some land there on the Senegal side of the river. But at the same time, I had to support my family. So I came back to America and I was working at Morehouse College at the time. And I stayed at Morehouse almost 6 years. And in this same time period, I was, I had an international perspective now after visiting Africa and a couple places in Europe. I wanted to leave the United States. So I began to apply for positions in the Middle East, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. And my oldest daughter at that same time, she got married.
Mhm.
I facilitated as the both her wali and the imam at her marriage nikah. I flew in from California, married her in Ohio. Her husband, uh, just as you said, I remind you of your father. Her future husband reminded her of me, and so I married both of them. And after a short stay in Ohio, my son-in-law, who's also a mathematician, um, they had their first child, and they left the United States and they went to Egypt. And he studied in Egypt for several years. He worked there and he studied there. And then they left Egypt and they went to the Sudan, where they have been ever since. They had a short stint in Kuwait, where he went off to Kuwait to work, but he has Sudanese jinsia. He has citizenship in Sudan, and I have a bunch of grandchildren. I don't want to say the number because I'll get it wrong, but there's a lot of there's a lot of them. There's at least 7 of them, and they're in Khartoum. And they came to when I was leaving Morehouse after I had applied to all these places. Kind of a crazy story. I had become I made the short list in all of these universities as a researcher and a professor, and I made the short list. And every time I made the short list, it seemed like at the last minute I had to unpack my bags and stay in the States.
Mm.
So uh, I had met a brother who lived in Ras Al Khaimah. Ras Al Khaimah is one of the Emirates that is near Oman. It's north of Dubai. And this brother was interested in marrying a sister that I was the wali for. And she chose, to reject his proposal, but he was very interested in marrying the sister. So he called me late one Saturday evening and said, "Aki, could you talk to the sister again?" I said, "Man, you like hearing no, don't you?" Because she already told you though, huh? And he said, okay, just one more time. I said, okay. In that same evening, I saw a ad in one of the academic journals for jobs overseas. And it fit my credentials verbatim, quotatum, punctuatum. But I was kind of discouraged at that point. After making the short list maybe 5 or 6 times, and I didn't feel like hearing another rejection. But and this brother lived in Ras Al Khaimah, and the job I looked at was in Ras Al Khaimah. And something told me that the reason he called this late Saturday evening was maybe a inspiration for me to look deeply at this job at Ras Al Khaimah because of the synchronization between where he lived and where this job was. It was really something from Allah for me to apply. One more time. So
You
I applied.
either.
Beg your pardon?
You were used to hearing no either. So both you.
Yeah. So I applied, and 9 days later they made an offer. And so I had a couple of months to gather up my family and get tickets and sell stuff. And then we were off to the Middle East. And I took this position, and this was in August of 2007. But I was still back and forth between the Gambia and, Gambia, Atlanta, now Gambia, Atlanta, Ras Al Khaimah. And 3 months into the job, the person who was this job was for a American university that had a branch campus in the Middle East, George Mason University. And it's a large class A1 school in Virginia. So they had kind of a strange relationship with the ruler of Ras Al Khaimah, who was a part of the educational configuration of the new campus. They had a hard time recruiting students and whatnot, and they hired a lady who had been in several international settings to run the school. And when I got there, the lady, she's actually the one that, gave me the green light and hired me. But when I got there, I realized that the lady was crazy. I mean, literally, I'm not talking about, popular culture crazy. I'm talking about clinical crazy. And she she was, just abusive to the staff and the professors, and people had enough. And a group of the staff and professors formed a group secretly and petitioned for the main campus, for the provost from the main campus to come over and replace her. So, and I was one of, I was cheering on this effort. I wasn't a part of the group, but I was cheering on this effort. And so the provost came over and he called me and said, "Could you have breakfast with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, but, why do you want to have breakfast with me?" I was saying this to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to one of the American hotels in Ras Al Khaimah, and he said this group that really raised the bar of complaints against this campus vice president said that they would like to see her replaced with you as the campus vice president.
Okay.
So I almost choked on my oatmeal. And we went to Abu Dhabi that following day, and there was a closed meeting, and I was appointed as the acting vice president for this campus. I had really never been in administration before, but you know, people, the staff and faculty asked me to do this because, you know, I guess from my parents and my upbringing, um, I'm a pretty straight shooter, and I don't mince words. You know, I people who know me know what I'm feeling because it's written on my forehead. And
I like it.
so, beg your pardon.
I said I like it.
So anyway, I ran the campus for a couple of years, and then George Mason had a falling out with the ruler of Ras Al Khaimah, and they closed the campus. And so when they closed the campus, I took my family back to Gambia. And in the meantime, you know, I had no income. I had some savings, and I took my family back to Gambia, and I applied for a job at the American University in Cairo. And I said, "Here we go again. I'm going to make the short list and get kicked under the bus." But alhamdulillah, because Allah had written it, I ended up getting the offer, and I spent 5 years in Cairo at the American University of Cairo. So I came back to the States in 2014 and began to work for myself um, as a freelance entrepreneur, doing a whole lot of stuff in real estate, in research, in coaching, in business coaching. But it gave me some time to write more. And I finished my book.
Yeah, y'all gotta get that book.
I finished my book, and currently I am, you know, basically doing the same thing in research and some technical assistance for people in research, and also in real estate. But that's basically, you know, I'm in the process of selling one of the houses that I bought when I came back. And you know, coming back to America, it was alhamdulillah, it was good from Allah in the sense that my children were not being educated properly in because I didn't send them to the American schools.
Yeah.
We sent them to some of the international schools because we wanted them to get a good grasp of the Arabic language. And so 3 of my 6 children who were there left with fluency in both Khaliji Arabic and Amaya in Egyptian Arabic, as well as Fusha. And I had been studying there as well in both places. So in that regard, it was a very beneficial experience. But their traditional academic progress was retarded, was not good at all. So we got back and put them in online schools here that are online high schools accredited by the state of Georgia, and they did very well. And my daughter finished. My son is now a junior in Georgia State, and my other son, he's finishing. 2 of my other sons are finishing their GEDs, and one's working, and one of them's kind of, contemplating the universe, but he's going to go to work too soon.
Yes, I understand how that. I mean, he's got big dreams.
Yes.
So alhamdulillah. I think that was an amazing life story. The reason I said that you remind me of my dad so much because he is an international traveler. He was an architectural engineer, and I think our family is pretty well known in Philadelphia. How familiar are you with Philadelphia?
When I came back, I was in PA for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew a lot of people in the region, and that's why I have the 267 number,
Oh, okay. So
because
you
I
know a brother named Khalil. He's older. He's around your generation. Khalil Abdul Hadi. No.
you know, I I think I may have known this brother through a brother who was Tariq Abdullah.
I think so. He has like a bottle class. He has glasses, but they're circle.
Yes.
That's my dad.
Wow, subhanAllah. I met him through Tariq. Tariq was an accountant.
Hmm.
Uh, Tariq, he finished at, what was it? My experience with PA was really, I was the national research coordinator for a 19 HBCUs. And one of the HBCUs was Lincoln.
Hmm.
And I had to travel there. And Lincoln is like, it's neither fish or fowl. It's not in Baltimore. It's not in Maryland, really,
Hmm.
but it's close. It's not in Philly, but it's close.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would be in the middle of the country. I would call a friend of mine in Queens to come and pick me up to take me to the airport because I was in the middle of the country. But anyway, Tariq graduated from there, and I was in and out of Philly a lot. In fact, so much, some of my colleagues, one of my good friends at Morehouse,
Hmm.
got up on the stage one time. I was leaving Morehouse, and people had kind of like, this is going away from me. And he introduced me and said, our brother from Philly is leaving.
Gosh.
And I said,
It's too late. You got
yeah,
the.
I just left it.
Uh-huh.
I said, Malcolm, sometimes privately, I told him, sometimes I act gangster like I'm from Philly, but I'm really not from Philly. I'm a country boy from Ohio.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So you mentioned having a international perspective. How did that change the way you viewed everything? How did that, when you left Ohio, when you left and you went overseas and, you talked about the filling of the soil and how did that change your overall perspective of your life?
Well, there were incremental steps to that. Um, I've lived on both coast. I lived in Boston for a long time. I lived in the middle of the country in Indianapolis. I lived in the South in Tallahassee. I lived in California. So I moved around quite a bit. And, it kind of, moving around and travel frees you from the identity expectations that were developed in your youth. So these identity expectations that a lot of people carry around, and you ask them, what do you think about such and such? And they'll tell you what everybody on their block thinks, but they never had a chance to really form a thought of their own
Hmm.
because it's these identity expectations confined by their geography. So what this international experience gave me was a chance to break the change, the chains of my self-identity expectations and explore the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to realize pretty early on that for African Americans, the descendants of slaves, it is almost impossible to understand America until you get out of America. When you get out of America, I remember one time I was in Dubai and I was meeting with Mos Def, the rapper, his father. And we had a business meeting at a hotel in downtown Dubai. And I came in the meeting kind of late and I just sat down and I was listening to the brothers in the meeting. And I didn't have anything to say. And Mos Def's father turned to me after the meeting and said, which country in Africa are you from, brother? And I said, Ohio. And he thought, yeah, all right, it was someplace in Nigeria. I said, no, I quit tripping. I'm from Ohio. And he said, brother, I just ask you this because I can't see any traces of America in you. And how did you achieve that? And I said, I didn't try to achieve it. I'm just being myself.
Yeah.
And so that experience and that conversation with him kind of gave me a lens and a filter to see that our humanity is universal.
Yeah. I
And
think, I'm sorry.
please go ahead.
I think he said that because it's like a lot of Americans have that sense of arrogance and that sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And it may have been, he may not have felt that from you. He may not felt that vibe of, I'm American and I have this, big shot attitude. So he can't be from America. So he has to be from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that may have been that.
Listen, the bumps in the road knocked the big shot down a long time ago.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
And I came to realize that, I remember one time I saw a police cruiser behind me in Dubai, and they had the lights flashing. And I had my visceral feeling and training of an encounter with the police, having lived in America all my life. And then I realized they're not looking for you, brother. They're not looking for you. Another time I was making Salatu Asr in one of the masajids, and the policeman came to the ranks and he stood right beside me, and his sidearm was brushing up against me.
Mm-hmm.
And after the salat, I was a little tense, but after the salat, he greeted me so warmly and said, Min aina anta? And I said, Amriki. He said, Ajib. He said, amazing. And this kind of reinforced this whole experience that the world is ours. It belongs to us based upon making the mental preparation for it, having economic intelligence, and having the kind of social discipline that we don't throw away our culture, but we take the best parts of it and we embrace the opportunities that are in front of us.
I love it. I love it. Alhamdulillah. So the reason that I have people on is because I want people to see, because sometimes when we're in our own world, we tend to think that's how every single thing is. And
Hmm.
with my father, he traveled, I think, every continent except Antarctica, of course. And he brought that perspective back to me. He always told me about his stories. He had this
Oh,
had conversations with me, and I always wanted to travel. Never been able to do it out of circumstances, but I've always had a different perspective because of what he's instilled in me. And I know that people don't see outside of their neighborhood, like you said. And I want to bring this sense of awareness to other people, that there are people who have made it that look like us. And it's not to have uh, because I had a really good example of an African American man in my life, and everybody is like so so pro black to the point that they're at a detriment to themselves. Like, every
sister, I'm glad you said that. That is a such a unique and blessed observation that your father, Rahimullah, had such a impact on your who you are in your worldview because of who he was.
yeah,
And that should be the inspiration for every brother to look at his family, his sons and his daughters, and rectify his relationship with Allah so he can reflect that on them.
it's like this is so hard right now. So no, but he did have an impact on me. A lot of people don't have fathers, but because I was like the curious one and I asked a million and one questions, a simple, like, people overthink parenting to me. He used to take me in the car and run errands, legit, just run errands. And we used to listen to talk radio and listen to NPR. And I used to ask questions and he used to answer them. And he used to tell me about his travels. And in my mind, it just created this whole big world.
Yes.
All we did was run errands. Like, it was simple. And
You
people,
know, Brother Omar, who you interviewed, who is in Malaysia now,
Mhm.
uh, I used to do a podcast in Egypt called Halal Breakfast and Brunch. Uh, and one of the podcasts, he called me after the podcast and said, Aki, you had me in tears. And I said, why? Because I did this podcast on parenting. And I said, this misconcept people have, and this really is directed what you said about just running errands with your father. There is no special value time that you spend with your children. All the time is value time. It could be showing them, listen, here's how you really mop a floor. Here's how you really cut the grass. You know, here, those are all the times are special times.
all the time. Like, even one more example, my mom was like big on education and how her daughters were going to be strong, independent women. And I quote that because I'm not to say that I'm not a woman, but I don't believe we should be raising strong black women. I know that sounds horrible, but we should be raising strong wives. And the little the little things, the little thing he did was this is so hard. I'm trying to cry. um he had handkerchiefs and he used to make me wash them, and I would serve him. And because my mom wouldn't care for that kind of stuff, she, of course, she would serve him and stuff like that, but it was more important for her to be me to be educated. But that little thing, like when he made like taught me how to serve him, it made me become or have the mentality, the understanding that the man is the man should be the ruler of the household. And the man is the, if you have the man as the center of the household and everything else functions around it, then the household should come together and then be congealed.
Alhamdulillah.
I know it's just something little as that. Like fathers don't understand the little things. Like he used to just have me, he this you where my I had to be accountable for his handkerchiefs. And it was small, but it taught me so much.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Well, I'm glad that I reminded you of such a important brother, and may Allah cause all of us to greet him at the Prophet's pond.
I mean, it's just even like we had to understand that I just want people to simplify things because we overthink it, and that's when all the difficulties happen. Like everything, every people should simplify things and take all of the extra emotional baggage out and simplify things like raising kids, being a wife, being a husband. And I know it's all a theory, but if we take all of the stuff that doesn't really matter out, then it's going to flow. I've,
Exactly.
I've always overcomplicated things in my mind and I overthink things. It's really, really good in business, but when you apply it to life and how you run things, it doesn't work.
It's a cinch by the inch, but it's hard by the yard.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So I also want to talk about you have a degree in criminology. That is the number one thing I really want to talk about because um I don't believe in all the bullcrap in reference to how we're the Black Lives Matter and all the other stuff. Like I understand that we as people have been through a lot, and I'm not negating the Jim Crow area, the slavery, and all the other stuff that has happened to us. But in these days and times, when there is a shooting, an accidental or a purpose shooting by the police, we end up somebody gets shot because most likely they're criminals, and then they did something bad that caused the incident, and then we end up destroying our neighborhoods. And I want to talk about your thoughts on what's been happening, in 2020 recently and stuff like that.
Well, Bismillah, criminology in its roots, especially in the penal system, is a evolution of slave management and slave control. There was never policing, organized municipal policing, and still till there was a emphasis on catching slaves. And can hold on. Dealing with children is like herding cats.
Uh huh. Slowly. I got kids. I keep on pushing mute and hollering at them.
Can I just step away for a couple of seconds?
Yeah, push mute so just in case you got to scream at them.
Okay, hold on. I'll be right back. I told you, boy.
You got to push mute. Listen, y'all need to ask some questions. I'm over here crying. Alhamdulillah, I'm like in tears right now. Like he really does remind me of my dad. And it's important that we just the little things. I really think that the little things in life um really matter. Like I know that it's hard for people sometimes to, because they think that their life is so complicated. But I remember there's times when I felt like my life you know, was a whole bunch of horrific things are happening left and right. And it's me, what was me, this, that, and the other. But when I sit back in retrospect, one, I may have caused portions of that to happen. Two, if I wasn't maybe in those particular situations and I turned to my Lord instead of trying to fix them myself and just having more patience, you know, those are the things that I kind of, go through. But if we simplify things and we understand that, law's in charge, then we'll be okay. But go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was deal. You were your kunya is Sali. I have a Sali too.
Oh,
So
yeah, sorry. Alhamdulillah.
So the reason, yeah, I finished all of my PhD coursework and passed the comprehensive exams, and I was in the process of writing my dissertation. And I said to myself, I was as a professor at the university because I left Florida State and I was teaching. And I said to myself, I am not going to waste another minute on this foolishness. And because criminal theory and all of this convoluted stuff is just socially constructed. It has no basis in empirical reality about what happens to people. And I thought that I would be better as a researcher in doing things outside of the scope of criminological theory. So, with regard to Black Lives Matter and the current movements, um, all of this stuff is just a replay of what happened in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Um, there's nothing has changed, and the the current upheaval and political instability uh, on criminal justice. The America has more people in prison than any place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because America is unwilling and will always be unwilling to embrace the reality that it is a settler kingdom that exterminated the uh, American Indians and enslaved over 20 million Africans. And it became the economic powerhouse of the world because it had 400 years of free labor. And that legacy is embedded in the DNA of American social and political reality that comes out as the criminal justice system. So you can't fix this thing by legislation and polite talk. This is why, you know, Allah has made Hijra upon the Muslims, those who have the ability to do so, a wajib until Yawm al Qiyamah. Because these people have man made ideas. They have man made social construction of what is crime. Well, I mean, look at this. This is stuff people legislate. Things that we find that are crimes in the Sharia are not crimes for them. Things that are crimes for them are halal for the Muslims. So I don't I don't do anything in criminal justice or criminology now. Um, my focus is on helping Muslims find ways that we can be independent economically.
Mm-hmm.
I've written a couple of articles on riba-free housing
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
and how Muslims can become economically independent. That's my entire focus. We don't. We need to return to the tawakkul like the birds and rely on Allah with intelligence, with emotional, with intellectual intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the stuff that we go through in discussing fairness and justice and criminology and all this in this country is just going to lead to more chaos. You're not going to fix this system.
Yeah,
Fix it by becoming economically independent and strong.
I agree. That's the message. The reason that I brought it up is because um the things that I think can fix the community is marrying your children off, having them finish school in some kind of way, not even college. You know, if they have a trade, trades are really, really good.
Hmm.
having them even if they're going to be an entrepreneur, having them set up. Also, eliminating the whole baby mom, baby dad thing.
The
Um,
what?
the baby mother, baby father thing.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
It is a detriment to any society to not have a stable family household. And a lot of these things that are happening in reference to a black person getting shot and by the police, it always goes back to parents. It always goes back to where they were raised, what was going on with them, the lack of stability in the household. And it may be an unpopular belief, but I want to talk about the root causes so that we can get to that financial stability. But if we're not talking about the issues that we cause ourselves, I think it's irrelevant. Like,
Exactly.
we're,
Exactly, sister.
I feel like we blame the system because the man did this and the settlers did that. But currently, I know nobody wants to believe it, but we're privileged as black people. The people who are more privileged than us is the honestly the LGBT community because they can do and say anything that they want. Just one second. Do anything to say they want and kind of
But
go.
you know, it's contextual. I don't think it's I don't think it's black or white.
Mhm.
It's contextual.
Thank you. It's not black or white, right?
There are historical precedent for the continuation of the effects of slavery. But we have the opportunity to reject that precedent.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And one of the reasons why even though I was doing stupid, wild stuff before I was a Muslim, when I was young, one of the reasons I didn't go to jail or prison because I knew that the man who ran that house at 242 North Stafford Street, I
Hmm.
would rather have to deal with um, any consequence than to deal with him. Don't bring home no babies unless you're married. If you go to jail, lose my phone number and my name out your mouth.
That's my parenting. Like me and your parents were probably twins because that's how our parents. But nowadays we celebrate, babies out of wedlocks. We have baby showers. Like,
Listen, I knew even though that, I was, I was a little man child running the streets. I knew that even though my friends used to have, by the 10th grade, some of them had a couple of kids. I was like, there's no way in the world that I'm going to make that mistake. I would rather go to the edge of one of the high cliffs in our town and just say goodbye to the world because I'm not going to deal with that with my father. I know what my father's reaction to that is going to be.
mhm.
And so I think that, I agree with you 100% that, the problems that we face would be overcome if we would return to understand the models of Greenwood and Tulsa and self-independence.
Even in Durham.
And yeah, exactly. Exactly. In Durham
Mhm.
and the places where
What he's referring to are the Black Wall Streets.
exactly, where self-reliance was a natural. You relied on yourself.
Yes.
Some of my brothers who are from other countries
Hmm.
who raise objections when they hear us talking about self-reliance or Muslims, we're united as one. And I think to myself, then why do you have a Pakistani Resettlement Association? Why do you have an Arab such and such association? Because it's the fitra of the human being to gather resources from among themselves and to be independent.
Yes.
But when I try to do it, you're calling me racist as a Muslim.
Oh,
And so I'm a just, as long as Allah has permitted me to be here, and until Allah decides that, my time is here, is terminated, I'm going to advocate for us to understand self-reliance and economic independence. And whether we're living in groups by ourselves or we're just doing it within our families, that is the mindset that we have to have.
I 120,000 agree. There's so much I agree.
Alhamdulillah.
So my issue is that we are so stuck in our ways. We are so stuck in the inability to look past our problems. And I'll talk about a lot about self accountability, and I get a lot of issues from people because they want to keep on bringing up systemic racism and all this other foolishness that is holding the black man down, and quote unquote. And I just don't understand exactly why we can't move past it. Like someone, they wanted to do a all right, this is going to sound horrible. They wanted to do a program called Black Boys Strong. And listen, so they wanted my kids to do it, and I was like, no, thank you. Because and they were like, why? And of course, because my husband is white, everybody in the back of their mind always thinks, oh, it's because of my husband's indoctrination on our family. No, it's because I don't want that stigma of my kids um, feeling that black is bad. The program was, of course, to encourage black men to be strong and this and the other, but I think we should be encouraging everybody to be strong and it shouldn't matter because when you isolate, and to me, when you isolate a individual group and you try to bring them up at the same time you're bringing them down because you're allowing them to you're telling them you're going to fail. I mean, if it wasn't for me telling you all this, you were going to fail. You know that your brown skin makes you um, less attractive. You know that your brown skin makes you have an inability to be successful this way. And you can't be successful that way because you have brown skin too. But I'm going to tell you how to get over it. Don't worry about it. But at the back of their mind, you're implanting that because I'm brown, I'm not going to be successful. What does it matter if I'm black or whatever? Let's just try to push forward.
Yeah, well, that is so true, sister, because we have this paradigm and this worldview that self-identity location is a predicate of what you're going to do. And you know, sometimes, and I don't say this in a pejorative way, but sometimes I forget that I'm a so-called African American because I don't use that as a compass. It's a part of my context. It's a part of my reality. It's a part of my history, and I'll never reject that. But I don't use that as the magnifying glass to singularly identify my ability to get things done. I've heard brothers tell me, Brother Zaid, you roll like a white man
It's crazy.
because you do things on time and no nonsense, and you follow up and you keep appointments and you know, you keep
Why
people
is that a characteristic of a white man?
exactly.
Why is that? But you hear that all the time. I talk like a white girl. Why? Because I try to pronounce my words. Like, you have like why do we have to be because we're black? Why do we have to be bad? Like,
It's that trap local self-identity paradigm that we buy into. We buy into it. I remember that my sister told me once in just a very brutal, frank way Stop dumbing your ass down for these niggas that you hang
Excuse his French, everyone.
with. You know, I mean, she told me that in a very just brutal, frank way that you're smart and you know you're smart. And you're not going to have friends. So
Mhm.
stop trying to have friends and be who you are.
That is a very, very, very clear thing that your sister said. And it was very well said. It was very well needed to be heard. It was one time that my dad, I was what was me. It was my second marriage, and I was wondering why I was having so much issues, and I was like, Dad, but this is making me a stronger woman. I had to go through this, and he looked at me and was like, you know, you're just dumb. You didn't have to go through any of this. You just had to follow the rules. And I was like, but why would you say that to me? And then at a few minutes later, I was like, oh, I didn't have to, you know, I all I had to do was listen to his advice about the husbands that I chose. All I had to do was listen to this, and then maybe I wouldn't have been in this situation.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. Um,
You don't
I,
believe in
I,
self love.
I,
How
I, I,
is
sister, I haven't had a chance, and I thank Allah for you for
okay.
inviting me for this because um, there are, and you know this from your locality, that we have used the community of Ahl Sunnah, the so-called Salafi Dawah, as an excuse to be underachievers. And I rarely have the chance to speak candidly and frankly. I write about it a lot, but I rarely have a chance to be candid about this. So I have another appointment coming up pretty
Hmm.
soon. So I just wanted for you to ask me the other things that you wanted to
Oh yeah, yeah. We so talk about your you want to talk about your book, and also the why should we invest in our communities, why should we be, and how can we be financially independent?
Okay, my book. My book is called Crack Mirrors, Emmett Till to Barack Obama, My Path to Authentic Islam. And much of it I've already touched on in terms of my life story. It's a memoir, kind of like a memoir, social political discourse essay, where I also discuss my point of view on things. But um, the book is available on Amazon. I've got a couple other publications that are pending that I'm working on now, and they're in self reliance. I'm doing a publication called "How Western Muhajirun Can Roll Like a Kabila, Can Roll Like a Tribe," upon self reliance and intellectual intelligence, or self development intellectual intelligence. And so, you know, I hope to be in a position that I can I can leave America again. I'm trying to do that in the process. Now I don't want to say where because I don't want the haters to get me.
Why, yes.
But I'm in the process of doing that, and I'm also in the process of trying to put some stuff together to help people here, um, based on my article on the lifestyle contract. I'm trying to purchase a large plot of land to have Muslims build inexpensive, off the grid container homes,
Hmm.
so we can live, you know, without this economic burden of always chasing, each bill, and we can live independently, non-REBA encumbered. So economic independence for me, it's the natural disposition that Muslims should have, regardless of ethnicity.
It's from
You
the
know,
Sunnah. It's from the Sunnah.
it's from the Sunnah. We should rely on Allah.
We were capitalism. We were not socialists. Muslims are not socialists.
Yes.
We were the Prophet ﷺ, they were, it was a capitalist. Why am I not saying it right? It was a capitalist culture. It was not a socialist culture.
Right.
Not dependent upon the government. Everybody provided for themselves.
Because they relied on Allah. They relied on Allah. If you see, this, we have a fundamental misunderstanding of where wealth comes from. Our relationship with nature. Money is produced out of nature. Equity is produced out of nature. Capital, labor is produced out of nature. Our relationship with the natural creation, the fitra that Allah created. We didn't make any of this stuff. Allah gave us intellect to learn how to manipulate it and turn it into these different terms. But all of it is our relationship with nature based upon the fitra that Allah placed in us to have these reliance and interrelationships with nature, that we produce equity, we produce money, we produce wealth. Mm-hmm. We discover that, this piece of shiny metal that we call gold has no intrinsic value other than the fact that we agreed upon the fact that it's something valuable to us. And so we produce it, and we can produce this for ourselves, the value for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I believe it all starts with the mental discipline, economic, intellectual capacity to redefine our relationship with family life, with nature, with development, with commerce. I'm working with some brothers right now.
Also, I want to mention to get off of welfare. And I know that this is very unpopular and it's very hard to do.
Do what?
Welfare.
Oh, welfare.
When welfare was placed in the communities, and I'm not saying that all Black people are on welfare. I'm not saying that the majority of white people are not on welfare, but it destroyed the country because it allowed the government to control things.
Yeah. Well, because it has the assumptions that it has. Hold on. The assumptions that it has is that you're not in control of your circumstances. And you can say farewell to welfare by changing your habits of consumption and your motivation towards production. I one of the great things that I experienced, and I chronicled this in my book, even though the Aqidah was completely false and misleading and detrimental, the methodology of self-reliance in the Nation of Islam gave me an insight into self-development that few other vehicles could have given me. Standing on street corners in the cold, selling the Muhammad Speaks newspaper to people who didn't want it and convincing people that they needed it, and for them just to give me 50 cents gave me a confidence in business that Harvard Business School couldn't have given me. Because after I experienced selling this newspaper, I could have sold practically anything.
Water to a well, right?
Yes. So, okay.
I agree with what you're saying. I think that I never grew up on welfare because my dad, even though he was an architectural engineer, he had 13 kids altogether and stepkids that included his stepkids. And there was never a time that we were on it. When I had to get on it was when I made the decision to get married to a brother, even though my dad kind of advised me to do different, because he didn't have the same background as me,
Mhm.
and it does make a difference.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one of the things. When I have a preaching moment, and I guess sometimes it happens out of frustration or anger, and I have to remind my family, you know, what are y'all complaining about? None of y'all have ever been on food stamps, welfare, or homeless. You've lived in 3 or 4 countries. You have, visited the world. You had the opportunity to learn the Arabic language. And now you are complaining that I won't do X, Y, or Z economically. Come on now. I'm living in the reality of, and this is one thing I think sisters have to recognize. When a brother's striving hard to please Allah and he's doing things that are consistent with the Sunnah, sisters should be patient because his risk comes from Allah.
yes, yes, I do agree.
His risk,
When my father ran out of a little money, he used to sell, like, even though he had one of the highest positions, one of the higher positions in his company, he worked for Raytheon, and that's a very, very
wow.
company. And
Hmm.
he was very high in his position. And when he needed extra money, he would sell newspapers. So it would be from Raytheon to newspapers. He wouldn't have a problem doing things that were quote unquote beneath him. And, and
Exactly. Because nothing's beneath him.
he got to make
Nothing,
it for his family.
nothing's beneath a man taking care of his family.
It's not. And you have to understand, like, this is not like, we as black people, we have this thing, oh, that's white people problem. Like, it's not. It's just, it doesn't have anything to do with color. When somebody is broke, somebody's broke. All have the same issues, and we all have to take the color out of it. I know, because me and my husband have been married for a while, and we have had struggles that we have had to deal with. And
Hmm.
because he's white doesn't mean that he automatically has money.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's a people issue, and
Exactly.
people have to stop colorizing poverty. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's just, it's a
It's more, you know, if you had to look at a locus of uh of concept and define it in terms of concept, it has more to do with the culture that resides in our heads than it does color.
yeah. It's,
Because
yeah.
my father, one of the things that he always said, if you cannot pay for it cash, you don't need no piece of plastic to put you in slavery.
Yeah.
You got money to pay for it, boy?
We
Then
were
you can have it. If you don't have no money, go get you some money so you can have it. But if you put a piece of plastic to have this thing, you are back into slavery.
we're not listening to our elders, especially our generation, because we know it all. We don't respect our elders. We don't understand the importance of them. I grew up with an older father. I'm 33, and my father would have been probably maybe 70 or 80 right now. So
Hmm.
I had a set of older parents, and that's why I kind of have the viewpoint that I do now, because my father grew up in the same era as you.
Yes.
So it's it was more of, like, you brothers back then, your wives were better off now, were better off then, because my dad made sure that my mom had houses. When he came back from whatever trip he has, he always wore the girls' back jewelry. And when I, got married, and my dad advised me, um, when he met the brother, and he was like, he's not, I don't think he's educationally, or he's not on your level, because I came from a family, two-parent household. And he advised me, and I'm hard headed because I'm like, I want to marry, like I gotta marry this strong Salafi, super hard brother so I could be the best Muslim ever. And that was legit my mentality. On top of the fact that I wanted to move out the house, um, he could have told me no, but he knew how hard headed I was, and I didn't listen. And I married the brother, and it did not work out the way that I wanted to. It was a horrible situation, but alhamdulillah, I didn't listen. I think that I think men have to be more involved in marrying their daughters off to proper people.
Absolutely.
This is a part of why we're failing as a community, because the men are not being men.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Sister, I'm going to have to
Oh,
run.
yeah.
I have another appointment. Um, I would love to do part 2 with Saleh.
Okay. We'll just set a date. All right. This is what do
Particularly,
we want to talk about?
well, I put my new book on the market,
Okay.
Rolling Like a Kabila,
Rule like a Kabila.
how we Muhajirs from the West should be collectively engaging ourselves in new lands where the Muslims are, upon self-development and economic intelligence.
Okay, that's what I want to talk about too, because I want to get everybody smart. Okay. And we can talk about whatever else you want to talk about. This is Sally with Sally Speaks. Thank you everybody for viewing. And please like and subscribe and get his book. It's called Cracked Mirrors on Amazon. All right, until part 2.
All right, thank you, Sister. May Allah bless you and your family.